Woe to him that buildeth a town with blood, and stablisheth a city by iniquity. Habakkuk 2:12. History is not a line, it is a ledger of echoes. The summer of love was buried in a California marsh, witnessed by 300,000 people who suddenly realized the music had stopped. December 6, 1969, the Altamont Speedway. They called it a festival, when the record shows it as a mass casualty event for the American psyche. It wasn't a party. It was an open-air asylum. The 4-foot-high stage acted as a pointless wall between the performance and 300,000 fans who transformed into a mob of collective psychosis. And just a line of Hell's Angels, armed with weighted cues and sharpened motorcycle chains, vibrating with a lethal, amphetamine-fed paranoia. While the Rolling Stones played Sympathy for the Devil, the air wasn't filled with peace. It was thick with the smell of unburned fuel, cheap speed, and the metallic tang of open wounds. This 1969 Hugger orange Camaro sat 10 yards from the stage, a silent orange witness to the moment the summer of love was bludgeoned to death with weighted pool cues and gutted by the knives of men who had been paid in booze to maintain an impossible order. It didn't leave the speedway as a car. It left as a mobile crime scene. And 57 years later, the blood in the Cowell induction hasn't dried. It's just been waiting for a jump. It's 2026. And in the silence of the Napa Valley's Exodus motors, the roaring yawn of an L-89 Witness announces its awakening for its next ride into the mouth of hell. Lyra, a girl whose voice is too big for a world this small, has come to claim that spirit of grace. Little does she know that some echoes don't just lie dormant waiting for a breath to come, that they themselves may come to life again. Welcome, listeners, to this episode of The Lot, The Possession. The fog rolling off the Silverado Trail was a wall of grey wool, smelling of sage and ancient asphalt. Elias Miller kept his hands at 10 and 2 on the wheel of the Tesla electric transport. He called it a transport because the former captain was from a day and age when cars and people were as uniquely different from how they sounded to how they looked. This wasn't either. The vehicle hummed with a low-frequency, almost non-existent vibration that seemed to compete for the stillness of the valley. GPS is still not seeing it, Elias, Lyra said, her eyes fixed on the horizon where the road simply dissolved into the scrub. She was his niece, the last of his sister's line, and she carried a hunger in her eyes that Miller recognized from the cockpit of a fighter jet. Not everything can be found on an app, Lyra, Miller replied, his voice a steady, tactical baritone. Where is your sense of adventure, girl? There are some things that can only be found all by your lonesome, by taking a step out of what's convenient or comfortable. Then, out of the mist, as if a mystical veil had been lifted, an access road appeared, and a sign that hung above a wrought-iron gate reading, Exodus Motors. It was a strange road, not what you'd expect. Asphalt turned to cracked, oil-slick gravel. No, very much the opposite. preternaturally smooth. No cracks, no gravel, no road noise. In fact, one would not be blamed for calling it a dead zone. On either side of the road there were trees, birds, even livestock, and not one of them approached the fenced road, nor could you hear them. And were you to look at the road itself, you might worry that it might swallow you up like an abyss in space. At the very end of the road there was another gate, and behind it sat a fleet of iron and glass that defied the new century. A collection of classic and exotic automotive history that stood almost as a testament to human achievement. Icons of a bygone era when mankind was at the forefront of his own destiny and achievements. And there she stood, the Hugger Orange 396, 1969 Camaro. A predatory spark ready to show a dead world the meaning of life. Peter LeBlanc was leaning against the gatepost, his charcoal overcoat buttoned to the chin. He didn't look like a man in a hurry. He looked like a man who already knew the end of a conversation he had yet to have. The 6 a.m. light was a bruised, flat blue, casting no shadows, only revealing the hard, cold shapes of the iron. Miller stepped out of the Tesla, his movement a practiced, tactical sequence. He walked straight to the Hugger Orange L89, pulling a high-intensity forensic torch from his coat. He clicked it on, a solid white bar that sliced through the blue gloom. He hovered the light over the front clip, reaching for the hood release with the practiced hand of a man who didn't trust a manifest he hadn't verified himself. As his fingers moved toward the chrome latch, the air around the grille didn't just turn cold, it turned empty. Miller's hand stopped an inch from the steel. It wasn't a shock. It wasn't a static discharge. It was a sensation of displacement, as if the space occupied by the car was no longer part of the Napa Valley. For a visceral, heart-stopping second, Miller felt a pressure in his inner ear, the rapid, agonizing decompression of a cockpit canopy shattering at 30,000 feet. He saw a flash, not in his eyes, but in his marrow, a jagged, strobe-light flicker of Altamont mud, the smell of copper, and a heavy, weighted pool cue descending through a yellow haze. His vision tunneled. The strength in his forearm simply evaporated, his hand falling back to his side, as if the nerves had been momentarily unspooled. He stepped back, a cold sweat breaking across his collar. In all his years of service, through the flak and the steel-walled rooms of his youth, he had never felt a no, this absolute. The latch is sensitive, Elias. It doesn't respond well to mechanical curiosity. You're a man on a mission, but you're looking for a car. And this one, she's more than that. She chooses you as much as you choose her. She's finicky and doesn't allow audits by those who only believe in what they can see with a flashlight. It was a clinical shutdown, precise, irrefutable. And yet Miller, despite feeling the subtle, supernatural weight shift, snapped back. "What are you talking about?" Peter stepped forward into Elias Miller's space in a manner that, in any other setting, any other circumstances, would have resulted in a fight. "Elias, you don't really need me to explain it to you, do you?" Miller stood paralyzed. He was no longer the ranking officer in the yard. He was a trespasser in an unholy reliquary. Peter turned his head toward the Tesla. "Well, in any case, ladies first, I believe. Lyra?" Peter outstretched his hand to her invitingly. This L89, as you already know, was rumored to have belonged to Grace Slick, her secret acquisition. It has been waiting 57 years for someone with the hunger to find the release. Why don't you show your uncle that some things can't be forced? Lyra stepped forward, her boots making a soft, rhythmic crunch on the Exeter's gravel. She didn't look at her uncle. She reached for the latch, the same chrome that had just repelled a colonel, and the hood rose with a heavy, oiled groan that sounded like a long, suppressed sigh. Underneath, the aluminum heads glowed with a dull silver luster. "There you go. You're one of 311, Elias," Peter murmured, his eyes never leaving Lyra. He addressed her softly. "But be careful what you wish for, young lady. In 69, like today, you must learn to control power, not restrain it. It's a very loyal machine. It tends to follow its owners." Peter walked to the driver's side door, holding up a brass ignition key. "I understand you are something of a singer. If you treat this one right, she'll sing to you." He tossed it. It didn't arc. It seemed to fall directly into Lyra's palm. "But don't be surprised if you find some others wanting to join the chorus." Lyra unflinchingly took the keys. Her uncle entered on the passenger side, subdued. Peter leaned on the window frame and grinned. "Remember, children, you break it, you buy it. Let me know how she handles." The pair drove off for a test drive, not knowing they had lit a fuse. Miles away, a haggard gas station attendant sat up from his porch chair. Hurriedly, he walked inside the station, which was also his home. Going to a drawer in his antiquated living room, he rummaged through old 1969 newspaper clippings of the Altamont chaos, then a scrapbook, before coming upon a slender and long wooden case. From it, he withdrew a jewel-encrusted ceremonial dagger. He held it to his face before whispering, "It is time for the reawakening." Seems that Elias and Lyra have discovered a true classic and breathed new life into more than just a car, but a dormant appetite. For the stone shall cry out of the wall, and the beam out of the timber shall answer it. Habakkuk 2:11. Thank you for joining us at The Lot. You'll be listening to Possession, Part 1. The ledger remains open, and the audit is never truly finished. Join us next week for Part 2, Burnout, where the price of a classic isn't measured in money, but weighed in sacrifice, and who we leave behind. Remember, stay in the light, or be swallowed by the shadows. This is The Lot, written and produced by Marcus Machado. The story continues every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Subscribe free at marcusmachado.substack.com.
To the great flame, they bared his heart. He watches and waits. He knew it would come, like the wind and the rain. Get on your knees and pray, on your knees and pray, on the last day. Silver and gold taken away. They loaded it up. The kings and the slaves. Duke Ellington's hand.